Good morning, and thanks for literally starting the first day of February with the Center for Food Integrity as we connect the dots with Dr. Food. I am Mickey French, the Executive Director of CFI, and as always, am proud to be here with David Hughes. David, what a better way to start the month with you and your decades of experience sharing our insights across the food chain. So there's a lot to talk about this morning. So let's dive in with 100-mile-per-hour winds in the UK and the effect that's had on you. So windy out.
It's been a windy month, I can assure you, Mickey. And I was just looking at the news that in the Faroe Islands, you won't know where that is, but that's between north of Scotland and Norway. They had, wait for it, 155-mile-per-hour winds last night.
Wow,
That's hurricane plus winds. It's astonishing. So it's been blowy here, but we're edging towards spring, so onwards and upwards.
great, great. So yeah, I mean, we're finally going to get some sun here. We've had a lot of rain, so thankful for the crops. We're happy for all of our viewers and listeners to be live this morning, so we encourage you to drop in questions into the chat, and we'll leave a few minutes at the end to answer anything that's in there. So it seems that squeezing is the theme of our first topic today, and I don't mean like Valentine's Day hugs. I mean a quite serious situation going on with global trade as well as a tight outlook for fuel, and not just German farmers, but farmers really across Europe. So tell us a little bit more about what's happening over there.
Right, this is a big deal, and I'm sure it's topical. You know, the Houthi terrorist attacks in the Red Sea area, and that's just causing chaos. Shipping, it's causing huge concerns about in the maritime world anyway. So remember, 12% of all global shipments, all global trade goes through the Red Sea and Suez Canal area. And now many ships are just rerouting around the tip of southern Africa, and that takes an extra 14 days to go to get up to Europe. And so what does that affect? Well, it affects food exports or imports into Europe, and not least wheat, rice, spices, etc. And if I was just looking at container freight costs, for goodness sake, and they've tripled in the last 2 months. Like it just tripled, just gone through the roof. And you can imagine what insurance costs are now like on ships anywhere in that area. And of course, it's exacerbated by what's going on much nearer you guys in the Panama Canal with its, can you imagine a shortage of water? That seems the oddest thing. And that's, if you take the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal, that's 20% of total global trade. It will have a huge impact. It will just push, it'll get back a little bit of inflation, which we don't need, to be perfectly honest. So that's front of mind for the food industry. And this second area, which is linked actually, relates to European farmers, and European farmers are revolting, for goodness sake. Right now in France, there are 15,000 police, 15,000 police. They're out trying to keep open Paris de Gaulle airport and to try to keep Rungis, the wholesale food market, open. And French farmers, that just livid. And they're livid because of low prices, as they see it, and high costs, and the view that the EU policies are accelerating the green policies which are being introduced at the moment in the EU. They're accelerating the cost pinch that farmers are seeing. And what's more, and it's not more than France, it's also Germany, Belgium. The farmers are not pleased at all. And what's particularly getting them is that the EU are saying they're going to remove the subsidy for farmers on diesel. So it's just to give you the context for that so the Red Sea attacks on ships, it's putting pressure on oil and fuel prices, and they're high enough as it is. But it's a particular bane here across the EU and in the UK. Fuel prices, they're much higher relative to you guys. So, for example, in the UK, car owners paid $10 per gallon for fuel. However, which is what, double you. However, farmers can buy diesel dyed red at half that to use in their tractors, machines for agri-use, etc. But the EU is trying to remove that, or not trying to, they will remove that. And UK farmers too are saying, wow, if they do that in the EU, they'll do it in the UK, and that's going to bring more and more price pressure to us. And there's a sort of political implication too with the EU elections coming up and our own. I mean, farmers are sort of threatening to swing their vote to the right, and what's more, to the far right, to those partners that are promising more protection for domestic food producers. And I'm intrigued, Mickey, there's a no farmers, no food movement has got quite some traction in the UK and spreading into Europe too. So, it's really messy at the moment. We didn't need this mess. We wanted some calmness after the impact of the pandemic, etc.
Right. No, it's
Oh,
not.
and can I just add in too that again in France that I'm sure you picked up the protesters threw tomato soup at the glass protected Mona Lisa
Yes.
2 or 3 days ago, and were they just nuts? Well, they might have been, but they were. It was all about healthy and sustainable food, and there was consumers, rioters were saying our agricultural system is sick. We have to fix it. And so they thought they'd get the public's attention, which they did.
They certainly did. Yes,
Yeah.
they put the
Yes.
headlines over here as well. Yeah, lots of squeezing from a lot of different areas, which consumers don't need on price of food right now either. So,
Yes.
our second topic, and thank you for all of that. It's really interesting for us to hear it from your point of view. Is really what's the planning that's at the forefront of the World Economic Forum at Davos. And it seems like top of the list of what business leaders are most worried about sits firmly in CFI's mission to build trust by creating some clarity on information. So tell us more about the risk report coming out of
Yeah.
Davos.
I get a lot out of this every year, and it's that so the World Economic Forum always publishes just before the big Davos meeting, so in early January, and for 2024 are we? Yes, right at the top. So they look at what are the big risks in the short term. The short term for them being the first 2 years, and then they have a longer term view, which is 10 years. And at the top of the short-term view, I've picked out right at the top is misinformation and disinformation in our world. And it's compounded at the moment by being in the midst of national elections across the EU and the UK, and of course in the US. Whenever you get elections, then you'll get a lot of people spouting, and it's not always the truth. And in fact, just across the world, half the population of our world are voting nationally this year. And they view this as being sort of, it doesn't bring stability. So that's at the top, disinformation and misinformation. The second big concern relates to extreme weather. And we're seeing that right now. And it's not necessarily related to temperature, but, as I mentioned, record-setting winds, storms, rains. It's very, very disruptive. And it's all about us at the moment. We're having quite the year. And of course, it's an El Nino year too. And the number 3 short-term one is polarization of society. And we can see that in so many countries, which has been sort of exacerbated by the pandemic, the growth of the haves and the have-nots. And I'm focusing particularly, case in point, say in the UK, that I was shocked to see the government just put something out in the last couple of weeks showing that 20% of households with children who are renters, so those that don't own their own house, they have no equity in a home, said that 20% of them said that within the last few weeks, they didn't have enough money to buy food that they need. And, this is we're a relatively rich country. We're not South Sudan, God love them. This is the UK. It's sort of frightening. And if you think it'll be an easy year to recover from 2019, 20, etc., and forget about it. It's I think there's a lot going out there, and it's really worrisome. The longer term business concerns of the World Economic Forum, and they get those concerns by surveying global businesses and key organizations around the world. So they haven't made this up. And over the next 10 years, they see the big issues just being dominated by climate change problems, such as, for example, biodiversity loss, which is a very big deal here at the moment in the UK. We're having surveys of what's the wild bird population like, and you can see that key species that we know and love have just been plummeting. But so it's concerned about biodiversity loss, also ecosystem collapse, and of course national resource shortages. So these green related concerns are bubbling to the very top, and they will be such a big deal for the remainder of this decade, without a doubt.
Mhm. Yeah, interesting trend of concerns that are made by humans, right?
Yes, yes, yeah. We caused the problem. We've got to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. So our final topic today relates to this very unique class of product, which is baby formula, hard to substitute. So we had our own issues here in the US when a combination of supply chain issues, FDA recall, and the shutdown of a major manufacturing plant led to a nationwide shortage of baby formula. So we saw what happened on our end as far as people trading on eBay cans of baby formula for hundreds of dollars. So tell us a little bit about what's happened recently in the UK.
Right. Okay. So as I've mentioned before, whenever you get price spikes, and we did for food, and we still are, there are always calls to identify the villain. And this is particularly true, especially true, I think, for products like baby formula. And so in November 2023, so a couple of months back, our watchdog agency, the Competition and Market Authority, began investigating into the baby formula market. And it's a market which is dominated by a couple of really big companies, the Danones and the Nestlés of this world, for example. And prices were rising for baby formulas at a time when particularly lower income consumers were really, really struggling. And as you said, baby formula, the whole market, it's unique dynamics because in the UK, whereas we tend to edge towards private label, way more than you do in the US, for baby formula, we don't. So parents are much less likely to buy store brand baby formula than they are to buy regular groceries. And costs, as we see dairy ingredient cost ingredients going up, it was no surprise that you saw retail prices going up, but there was a huge strain on young families. And what's more, a lot of the best deals at retail were linked to supermarket loyalty programs. And I mean, to be honest, that wasn't legal. On the legal side is really complex in the UK, probably is in the US too. It's against the law in the UK to advertise baby formula for those babies under 6 months old. And as I said, you can't use supermarket loyalty points for buying the formula. And why? Well, this reflects sort of pre-pandemic concerns and current concerns too, because the government is intent on promoting breastfeeding rather than bottle feeding. But it doesn't come at a good time right now. So the CMA, our competition authority, it's well into it. And before its results are out, actually, supermarkets are cutting formula prices by 10 and 20% because they know what the result is going to be. They're going to, irrespective of whether they're seen as being villains, they'll be pushed to get those prices down. So, I wish those young mums, new mums well. Luckily,
Right.
I'm a long way from that, Nikki.
So I'm going to save our final tidbit for next month because we do have a question in the Q&A, which I think is on all of our minds is how and is AI technology affecting food supply or nutrition? Thoughts on AI in food?
Well, I don't know to the extent is it affecting it? I mean, it is. It's not particularly evident. What is quite clear is talking about AI is dominating, both in terms of food industry trade magazines, but also in the public press. And the issue is consumers are sort of worried, is this good or is it bad? And of course, it can be either. In terms of impact on the food industry per se, I think we've mentioned before, mean, I was amused to see that the crunchless snack was introduced so that gamers could keep gaming with their friends without the interference of crunchy snacks. And God love PepsiCo were in not claiming, I'm sure that it was the case, that this was a product developed with the help of artificial intelligence. And so it's going to have a huge impact. I
Yeah.
mean, but I don't think it's going to be. It will become increasingly evident through this year and onwards. And what's more, at every level, not least at farming, for example, but all the way through. Yeah, it's for somebody, I'm not in the first flush of youth, but I'm going to let somebody else have to handle that. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. So, thanks for joining us today. That'll be our close for February. Can you believe it? We'll hope you'll join us again on March 7th for our next edition. And as always, remember to visit foodintegrity.org for more information about CFI and our offerings like our transparency assessment, which when you look at what's coming out of World Economic Forum, really, are we being transparent enough as a food system? We have all kinds of information for you that you can tap into there. So, David, have a great February. Thank you so much. And we'll see you again in March.
And looking forward to it. It'll be springtime. March is almost springtime. Bye
Perfect.
bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Bye bye.